we're going to go to TN. Hello, TNH. You're up last, sir. Hello.
Hey Bart, how's it going?
Pretty good. Get a hand for
Hey,
us?
yeah. Before we start, I just want to say you're like my poker therapist. Every time I go
Poker
on tilt, I just
therapist. Oh, I've never heard that
every time I
before.
go on tilt, I just want to turn into the show and call in. Which only happened once, but it was my second time calling in. Anyway, um, so it's a 2-5 game at Boston Encore.
Oh, okay. Oh,
Yeah.
okay. Awesome. But you didn't see me when I played there a couple weeks ago, did you?
No, I haven't run into you yet. I ran into you at Boston Billiards once.
Oh, did you go to the meetup?
I went, but not as part of the group. I just
Oh,
happened to
you're
be
not
there.
one of those MIT kids?
No, no, no.
Those Asian
No.
MIT kids. I saw another one of those
Right.
kids too. Actually,
Yeah, yeah,
on
yeah.
the flagship podcast tomorrow, it's part two of my encore adventure from a couple weeks ago, going over the 5-10 hands. By the way, I don't think I said in the top of the show. I meant to mention that I actually had my no, maybe I did. I had my best cash session ever from Hustler on Thursday, where I won. I think it was 48,000, which is so funny because like that's not even that big of a win in that game. But these games don't play like this, and they don't at these stakes like in normal. I mean, you can't. I couldn't win 48,000 playing 10-20 at Commerce, which is like the largest game in LA. You know, it's just insane. All right, 2-5 encore, which is 1,000 max buy-in. Okay.
That's right. Yeah.
Yep.
So I think I think we're about. I mean, when we got to the tournament, we're about 2,200 effective, but it was three ways to the
So you
flop.
started like at 2,300 effective here or something?
I think the villain had me covered. I think we both about even about 23, 2,200.
Okay.
And then there's another player in between, but
Okay.
um, so under a gun opens to 20.
Okay.
Um, and then plus two with three bet to 65.
Okay.
And now, against this action, I'm actually a little bit nervous because I'm holding ace, king, ace of diamond, king of spades,
Ace of
and
diamonds, king of spades, and what position?
I'm in a cutoff.
Okay, so you've got an open, and then you've got a three bet in front of you, right? Under the gun of 20, plus two, three bets to 65. I mean, the theory would go that this should be four. I mean, you should be pretty much four betting here. I did see a lot of dead flat calls to three bets. You can sometimes get away with flat calling in between with three bets. It's not really fundamentally sound. The reason why is because an aware player will just put the hammer down as the initial opener and sort of make their four betting sort of wider. I've never, I was actually thinking about this. You could probably sometimes play this with a trap and once in a while cold call with like aces or kings as a three bet if you thought the player was aware. But this is why we don't necessarily cold call all that much to raises. There's really only special circumstances that you can do it. So you hold ace king off in the cutoff, okay?
Right. So I thought, four bet was was mandatory.
Okay.
So I decided to four bet. Now, sizing wise, I thought about it for a little bit because we're playing pretty deep, and I wasn't sure how crazy I wanted to make it, and also their ranges seemed really tight. So just because of the position, so I just did like a 2.5x. So I went to 165.
165 in position. I mean, I suppose that you are allowed to four bet. Yeah, I'm not an expert necessarily in four bet pots because they're so sort of rare in live poker. There was a four bet pot that I even played that I was kind of scratching my head. I ended up winning the hand from Hustler where I went to the flop with one SPR with ace queen off. But I think, I've heard that deeper you can make this larger in position in four bet pots. But then sometimes from out of position, you want to make it a little bit larger to dissuade calling. I think it depends a little bit on stack size. I just kind of tend to go to 3x. I think there's probably isn't that much. I don't think there's anything necessarily wrong with your sizing. I would just say that nowadays you have to understand that if people are three betting somewhat reasonable ranges, if you just go to 2.5x with a four bet, there's probably not going to be much fold equity because coming back around here, it's going to be like 250, 100 for the guy to call. I mean, I guess maybe he starts to like fold off some of the absolute weakest portions of his three betting range. That's why with these stacks, I would just at least go 3x. I mean, that's just kind of my thought off the
I
cuff.
guess could I go bigger with the four bet and you just fold to a five bet? just because because of
I
how
mean, you
deep we
just go
were.
bigger with a 4-bet for the reasons I stated. I mean, it's got nothing to do with wanting to fold to a 5-bet. You can decide whether to fold to a 5-bet. Nate, our resident Solve for Live new CLP preflop ranges, who I know studies this stuff, says 2.5 to 3x in position. Is that accounting, Nate, though, for a 400 big blinds as an effective stack? And of course, even though it's 400 big blinds on paper, it's probably shallower than that because of the 4x open sizing. I would probably tend to tick those numbers up slightly deeper, maybe to 2.75 to 3.25. But I'm not making it larger so that I fold to a 5-bet. I'm just making it larger so that there's at least some fold equity with the
Yeah,
play, and you're also
I
getting
kind
more
of
money in position too.
I kind of wish I made it bigger, just being results oriented. But so both players ended up calling, which really surprised me.
So the under the gun calls the
Cold
4-bet.
calls, yeah, yeah,
Uh-huh.
UTG cold calls, and then the three better calls. So
That's
now I'm
interesting
just putting
because
it,
you have
yeah,
ace king, because that's
uh,
probably one of the hands that I would put into. Well,
the cold calling range.
well, it might be one of the hands at this stack depth that under the gun calls the 4-bet with, that just calls
Right,
ace king
right,
off, and the same thing with 3.
right.
But because you have it, someone's probably going to have a midish to high pair that they don't feel comfortable 5-betting here.
Right. So I'm thinking I'm up against like queens and jacks or something like that, right? So I'm like, I really have to get lucky on the
Some
flop.
people are saying fold live, like open and then a 3-bet from +2 and fold ace king off. Come on, not I'm sorry. I don't think so. Anyway, I don't know. I mean, maybe if
Maybe
people
a
were
one,
playing,
maybe a 1-3, maybe 1-2, 1-3.
I mean, if people were playing like so tight, but I mean, we know that we make our money from live poker. I mean, I guess you could make a case if the +2 player was only if it was a super OMC. What is an OMC? OMC is not a poker term like minimum defense frequency, but OMC stands for Old Man Coffee. I don't know who came up with that, Old Man Coffee. If an Old Man Coffee type, which means a guy that plays so tight, right, and just sips around coffee, if he 3-bets and his 3-betting range is always aces and kings, sure, you could fold ace king to his 3-bet, right? You should fold. That's not necessarily the reality of it. But anyways, okay, so 4-bet to 165, both call,
Both call.
and now we're at like 500, right?
500. Yeah,
Yeah, okay.
exactly.
Uh-huh.
Flop comes ace 7-8, ace of spades, 7 of hearts, 8 of spades.
Ace
And
of
I have again,
spades, 7 of
king of
hearts,
spades.
8 of spades. Is that right?
Yep.
And you got ace king with the king of spades.
King of spades.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay.
So I'm not too worried about any flush draws right now. And I'm only worried about I'm actually fist pumping, and I'm like, okay, how do I get the most value
I
against
mean,
like under pair?
it's a pretty good flop for this configuration in the sense that we probably should. I mean, I guess +2 might have once in a while a sliver of pocket 7s and pocket 8s. Once in a while, you might get unlucky where he overcalls with like ace 8 suited or ace 7. Under the gun shouldn't have any of those hands though, because he's not even closing the action
Right.
pre. So,
Right. That's what I was
so
thinking.
this is a very good flop for you.
So I sometimes I would check if it's heads up, I guess, just to induce, but in this way, with three ways, I didn't want to go three ways to the turn. So I'm really betting to kind of go heads up and deny some you know some bit of equity, like two outers here and there. But so I bet 200.
This is interesting. This is why it's interesting, because again, obviously multiway. Here's my thought here. So multiway, the theory goes, right, that you're supposed to take somewhat small sizing to force people to defend, right? Because their responsibility for defending goes way, way down, right? When in a multi-way pot. But I will say here, especially when you block pocket kings, if you're just going to get action from ace X here, then I could make a case for actually going to like 350 here, because you're not worried about any of this other shit, like 8X or something calling you down, or 9s or 10s or jacks. Like the sliver, I mean, if you went 150, even the under the gun isn't supposed to defend there with jacks. If you go 150, maybe the guy from +2 is supposed to defend with like 10s or jacks for one street. So I guess the only difference between whereas if you bet 350, is he forced to fold out? It's interesting because I could see, because of this exact flop, thinking about the ranges in this way, if you just wanted to go max, you could do that to get max value from ace X. With that being said, you could probably still take the small sizing and then just size up on turn. Whatever you can try to do to get the money in, you know?
So would you say 200 is small or
Well,
kind
I
of
would kind of think
medium
150
size?
is small. It's a little bit medium. So hero bet's
Okay.
200. Okay.
So UTG calls and the other player folds.
20%. I don't know. Cap says bet like 20%. I don't know, man. Yeah, I kind of want to try to stack an ace. I'm sorry. So hero goes 200 and then UTG folds?
Yeah, no, UTG calls,
Okay.
and then the other player plus
All
two
right. So
folds.
UTG calls and then plus two folds.
Yeah,
Well, this is like fucking gin for you,
I know. Yeah.
TN.
So what?
Because it's gin for you because, like I said, look, on paper it's gin for you because the end of the gun shouldn't have sevens or eights here. And he's called next to act, which means he's even stronger than plus two. And he really should have another ace long with you here because he shouldn't have ace eight suited or ace seven suited. Now I say he shouldn't. Does that mean that they're going to sometimes show up with hands that that they're not supposed to? Sure. But more often than not, the hand will play out the way that I'm saying, and I see dollar signs in my eyes in this particular spot on the flop when it goes bet call next to act. The other guy folds when this guy should never have sevens, eights, or ace eight or ace seven. So I love this spot from you.
But then he
900.
shouldn't have a lot of aces, right? I mean, what ace would cold call a four bet?
Ace queen
What?
suited, ace jack suited. I mean, he could have ace king off along
Guess
with
so.
you.
Yeah. Yeah. Turn is nine of hearts.
Okay, so the turn's the nine of hearts. Again, there's 900 in the in the pot, right? Because you bet 200 and then UTG called, and it's ace of spades, seven of hearts, eight of spades. Turn is the nine of hearts, and that doesn't really make that much of a difference.
No,
I don't
no.
think.
Yeah, I wasn't worried about Jack 10, to be honest. I really was worried about folding out queens and jacks. Like I didn't want to double barrel to rep ace king. Like I
Let me ask you
wanted
this
to.
question, Tien, though. What is more likely, even though you block an ace, right? With an ace with you holding an ace, what is more likely that your opponent holds? Is it an ace or is it queens or jacks when you bet 200 on the flop and he called next to act with a guy behind him? What do you think is more likely here that he would
Well,
hold?
now that you, the way you're saying it really should be right.
It really
It's
should be
suited
more
ace.
ace X, right?
Right.
And that's the whole thing with multi-way hand reading and things like that, where he really shouldn't have queens or jacks here when you go 200 on the flop with a guy behind him, you know?
I just feel like a lot of cold calling range, especially cold four bet cold calling range, is condensed. It's very condensed to like big pocket pairs instead of suited aces. I just based on what I've seen, but yeah, of course there could be some ace queen suited ace jack
I
suited,
just,
yeah.
because of this extreme configuration, I kind of like a bet here again. Now, this is
I see,
it's obviously much different than like a single raise pot where you raise the cutoff and the big blind calls, where you might consider
Right.
checking back on the turn, right? Or even,
Yeah.
to be honest with you, even if it's a three bet pot and your heads up, if let's say plus two opens, you three bet, plus two calls, you bet flop, plus two calls, turns a nine. Yeah, absolutely. I can make a case for going one third or checking on this card, but because it's such an extreme configuration with this whole four bet thing, that's why I kind of like betting again. But okay, you check, so it goes check, check,
Yeah.
and the river,
The river's eight of hearts.
eight of hearts. So that brings in the backdoor heart draw. So it's ace of spades, seven of hearts, eight of spades. So there's front door spades out there. Turns the nine of hearts. River is the eight of hearts in this four bet pot. Hero does not have the ace of hearts. So ace X of hearts is possible, obviously.
Yeah, it's possible. And he just snapped. That's 850.
So UTG bets 850.
Yeah.
I mean, as played, I can't imagine possibly folding. I think maybe you're gonna
Right.
be up against the same hand here some of the time,
I
but
honestly, yeah, and I thought that I couldn't really think of a hand that I was losing to, except for maybe pocket nine. Somehow thought that I was c betting with king queen.
here's a crazy thing here, TN. But your opponent sort of, I think, took it away from you. if your opponent bet like 300 here or like 250,
I think I was raising. Yeah.
I'd almost like a raise. I mean,
Yeah.
I'm trying to stay as consistent as possible for the same reasons why I like a turn bet.
Right.
If your opponent bet less than 1/3 on the river, I think I would raise, to be honest with you.
I felt like this board was a board where I want to get my money in, just because I'm pretty nutted on this board. In a 4-bet pot.
I mean, here's the thing. I think you have to. I think you have to call. I think sometimes you might be up against the same hand here, but I do think it's interesting if you took a smaller sizing.
Do you think that
I might raise?
Yeah. Do you think that? Yeah. I actually thought about raising until I saw the purple chip in the bet, and I was like, oh, oops.
I mean, that's great. I mean, against that type of sizing, it's that's what people are saying. It's not ace jack or ace queen. I don't know if they're gonna take this type of.
Do you think you would have? My check on the turn would have induced a big bet. Maybe he was going for value with ace queen or ace jack.
I think it's possible that someone might go for value from up front on busted spade if they know what's going on, and your ace king shouldn't be doing much checking behind on the turn, but not necessarily for the sizing though. It kind of sets things a little bit more polar in this spot. I would be very shocked if guy turns over ace queen. I'm sure you'll be hating life if he does and you just call. But what ends up happening here?
I snap called and I was wrong. And so he had ace 10 of hearts.
Ace 10 of hearts. That makes sense.
Yeah.
I mean and by the way, that's another reason why you can't raise against this sizing, right? I mean, we kind of washed over that because you lose to ace x of hearts. It would have been interesting. So let's go back to the turn here where you checked back. It would have been interesting in a 4-bet pot. The whole hand actually makes a whole lot of sense, besides that it's a little bit wide for him to call 4 bets, right, with ace 10 suited.
Right. Yeah.
He would pick up a huge combo draw on the turn here, right? Open-ended and a flush draw.
I wonder if he would check raise, yeah.
If you bet again, would he check raise? It's just so... The hand itself is kind of so crazy because it should contain such sort of tight, compact ranges. If you bet on the turn with ace king and he check raises you, it's like, are you folding? Because he shouldn't have any of that.
Right.
You know what I'm saying?
The thing about this is that because of 4-bet pot, I can't really put him in a lot of value hands. If it was a 3-bet pot, sure, I could find a fold, but in a 4-bet pot, it's really hard to find a fold on this board, even if you check raise me on a turn.
It would have been interesting if you got check raised as a semi bluff with top pair and.
Right.
Now I don't know. I mean, I don't know if this guy. By the way, guys, he made so the ace 10 of hearts made a flush, right? He's got the nut flush, right, which was available. I don't know if this guy calls with ace 10 of hearts. Does that mean he calls with jack 10 of hearts? Probably doesn't.
Right, that's what I was thinking.
I don't think so. I think ace 10 of hearts is a lot better in people's eyes than jack 10 of hearts.
It just seemed like he was trying to get lucky anyway. So if he picked up more equity on the turn, I don't think he was going anywhere. So I might have lost. Being results oriented, I might have lost more. I might have lost my entire stack if I bet the turn.
Yeah, I'd like to see what the live chatters say here, because it's such a sort of Nate, you got an opinion here. It's such kind of a unique 4-bet scenario where you've got a guy who calls 4 bets as the initial open with a guy behind. We have ace king, and we decide to go for max value on turn, and we bet, and he check raises when he shouldn't really have any ace 8, ace 7, ace 9, definitely not 7, 8, not 7s, not 8s, not... I mean, it's crazy. If we say he doesn't have ace 8, ace 7, ace 9, and not jack 10 suited, right, then how do we fold? Now, you could be getting free rolled against, though. He could have ace king of hearts.
Sure, yeah. I still don't think I would be folding to a check raise, just because I think I have the nut advantage on this board, and I'm like, what is he repping if I have aces in my range?
Well, I mean, you are the one that would, obviously could have aces here, but it's an interesting little spot. I mean, you don't get into many 4-bet multi-way pots where you're considering getting check raised on turn, but the river you have to call. I mean,
I have to call, right?
Yeah,
I mean, I'm getting, I only have to be right 33% of the time. Is that right?
Well, you're getting 2-1, sure.
Right.
I just think that you're going to probably get shown down the same hand some of the time too, but it's an interesting call. I appreciate it.
All right.
Thank you very much, Tian.